It was 8:17 a.m. when Karen Whitmore came storming across my lawn in her pink silk robe, mascara streaking down her cheeks like war paint, screaming at my crew as they drove steel posts into the ground posts that would slice straight through the middle of her $1.8 million backyard. She didn't know it yet, but every swing of that hammer was built on a truth I'd uncovered, a truth that was about to tear her entire kingdom apart. And when she finally realized what was coming for her, well, let's just say that was the moment everything in Lakewood Township changed. I never wanted a war. I spent 30 years under the hood of busted pickup trucks, turning wrenches, burning my hands on exhaust manifolds, fixing engines other people had long given up on. When my back finally snapped 3 herniated discs in a year, I shut down the shop and told my wife, Cheryl, let's finally buy that place by the water. She'd been fighting lupus for years, the painful kind, the kind that makes every step feel like it's cutting bone. Her doctors said water therapy might keep her mobile. After a decade of scraping every penny, we bought our little cabin, just 1.2 acres, nothing fancy, more like a fishing shack someone forgot to tear down. But the shoreline, those 200 feet of quiet lake, that was gold. Cheryl called it her sliver of hope. And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. Then we met Karen. She lived next door in a glass and steel palace the size of a small airport terminal. Her husband Brad worked in zoning, one of those guys who smiles while holding a knife behind his back. Karen wasn't just the queen of the neighborhood. She acted like she owned the entire lake. And the moment she realized her absentee neighbor had died, she simply expanded her kingdom right onto the land that would eventually become mine. By the time I moved in, she had a private dock jutting over my shoreline, jet skis tied to cleats she'd drilled into my property, and a record of hosting parties so loud you could feel the vibrations through the soil. I found out something was off the day she marched down to the water while I was fixing loose boards on my dock. I heard her heels' first sharp, angry clicks on the wood. She held a stack of papers like she was serving a subpoena. "This shoreline is an established recreational easement," she said, waving the documents in my face. "You can't block community lake access." I glanced at the papers. Perfect formatting, township letterhead, official stamps. The problem: I'd spent my life working with people who tried to cheat me with fake repair receipts, forged car titles. I knew a phony when I saw one. "Ma'am," I said, hands on my hips, "this is my dock, my shoreline, my property." Her smile snapped off like a brittle twig. 20 minutes later, Sheriff Morrison was in my driveway. Karen cried like she was auditioning for a drama series, sobbing about how I'd threatened her safety and violated community agreements. He gave me a long look, the kind that said he'd been dragged into Karen's theatrics before. But a complaint was a complaint, and Brad worked in zoning, so I got a warning. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about a dock. Karen wanted control of the land, the lake, the rules, the people. And I was just the unlucky newcomer who didn't fit her picture-perfect world. The battle started small. HOA notices for my fire pit, the one Cheryl used to ease her joints in the evenings. A parking violation because my truck was too close to the edge of my own property. A demand to remove Cheryl's medical signage because it didn't match the community aesthetic. I tried to shrug it off, tried to remind myself that we'd come here for peace. But Karen wasn't interested in peace. She wanted me gone. The first big blow landed on a Monday morning. I was drinking coffee, planning Cheryl's therapy schedule, when the zoning office called. "Sir, your dock repairs require a full environmental impact study. Cost is $1,200. Timeline is 6 to 8 months. My jaw nearly hit the floor. For 3 loose boards. "Yes, sir." A complaint was filed regarding potential wetland disruption by your neighbor, Mrs. Whitmore. I didn't have to guess who typed it. Days later, another notice arrived, something called Historic Preservation Guidelines, so specific and ridiculous it felt like someone had written them with my property in mind. Funny how Karen's multi-million-dollar fortress didn't fall under those same guidelines. The weight of it all started crushing me. One night, Cheryl tried to climb into the lake for therapy, but her hands shook too hard, her face pale with pain. I held her up, feeling helpless, useless. After I got her back inside, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the stack of violation notices, wondering if maybe Karen was right. Maybe we didn't belong here. Maybe selling and leaving was the only way to save my wife from the stress. It's a strange feeling wanting to fight, but being too tired to lift your fists. Then came the inspection. An environmental officer showed up at my door with Karen standing behind him, arms crossed like she was presenting evidence for a murder trial. She pointed dramatically at Cheryl's fire pit. "That's contaminating runoff into protected spawning zones," she said, voice trembling with fake concern. Then I saw it, trash scattered around my shoreline. Cigarette butts, wrappers, a broken beer bottle. None of it was mine. It was staged, placed just right to be photographed. And watching her stand there acting like she was saving the lake from me, something inside me hardened. After the inspector left, I drove straight to the county courthouse. For 3 days I lived on stale coffee and cheap pastries as I dug through property records, zoning archives, permit histories, anything I could legally access. My friend Jerry, who worked part-time sorting deed transfers, helped me sift through decades of mistakes and misfiled documents. And then buried under layers of old maps we found it, a surveying error, a tiny oversight made by Karen's own father years ago. According to the original plats, my property didn't stop where everyone thought it did. It extended 25 feet farther east, which meant Karen's outdoor kitchen, half her pool deck, and her prized rose garden were built on my land. For the first time since moving in, I smiled. I called a licensed surveyor. He marked the true boundary with steel stakes driven deep into the soil. When Karen saw them from her kitchen window, I watched her face twist into something sharp and panicked. That was the exact second she realized she'd been trespassing on my property for years. And I wasn't done. I gathered every photo, every timestamp, every GPS coordinate, proving her dock expansions illegal. Underwater lights and boat lift were violations of state environmental law. Then I called the Department of Natural Resources. Inspector Frank Hale showed up 3 days later, clipboard in hand, expression unreadable. "Ma'am," he said, walking along her dock, jotting down notes, "these structures need removal within 30 days, or you'll face $500 in daily fines." Karen blinked at him like he'd spoken another language. Then her lip trembled. "There must be a misunderstanding. My husband handles these things." "Then he should have pulled permits," Frank said flatly. "Ignorance isn't a defense." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. I think that was the first time in her life she didn't have a script prepared, but the knockout punch came later. While digging through county records, Jerry and I found financial documents tied to Brad, consulting fees paid by developers, emails implying favors in exchange for expedited permits, and one message in particular written by Brad himself: "We'll push Morris out. He'll sell cheap eventually." I printed everything. Then I contacted the FBI agent investigating corruption in the region. When I handed him the stack of documents, he whistled low. "You just made my month," he said. Karen, sensing her empire cracking, tried a last-minute stunt. She offered $50,000 in cash to the township supervisor to shut down a small lakefront event. I was planning an event where half the community would have learned exactly how dirty she'd been playing. What she didn't know was that the supervisor had been cooperating with the FBI for months. Her entire bribe was recorded in perfect clarity. And so the stage was set. 2 weeks later, while Karen hosted her annual gala, everything gold-plated and catered by chefs flown in from Chicago, FBI agents surrounded her mansion. Guests in suits and gowns froze mid-sip as agents took Brad away in handcuffs. Karen screamed that it was political persecution, that she was being targeted, that her enemies were conspiring. But nobody moved to help her. Nobody dared. Her voice cracked as she realized she wasn't the queen anymore. She was just another criminal caught in the spotlight. Over the next few days, the news exploded. Files seized, officials arrested, environmental crimes exposed. The entire HOA board dissolved under public pressure. And Karen, the woman who'd once strutted across my dock like she owned the world, was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. Her mansion fell into foreclosure. Her name was barred from any municipal involvement across multiple counties. The last time I saw her was the morning the FBI came to collect the final round of evidence from her house. She stood on her porch wrists, cuffed hair tangled, eyes hollow. She looked nothing like the woman who'd claimed my shoreline, forged documents, and tried to crush me with the weight of her influence. And as they loaded her into the back of the federal SUV, I felt no triumph, no celebration, no joy. Just a quiet, steady certainty. She chose this war. I only finished it. And if there's any lesson in all of this, it's this: power means nothing when the truth is against you.